The planet Zurith had always been a place of harsh beauty. Its jagged mountains pierced the skies like broken glass, and the red dust swirled endlessly over the cracked plains. To outsiders, it seemed lifeless, but anyone who looked closely could see the traces of struggle and resilience. Today, the planet's scars told a story of war. Captain Elias Carter, a human soldier of the United Earth Expeditionary Force, moved cautiously along the dusty ridge. His boots sank slightly into the red soil with each step, and the wind carried the faint scent of ozone from the storms that often tore across the plains. Elias' team was behind him, scattered among the rocks and hills, their sleek human armor contrasting sharply with the alien landscape. They had been sent on a peacekeeping mission, but it seemed that peace was always out of reach. The mission had started like any other, monitoring skirmishes between two alien factions and preventing the fighting from spilling into civilian zones. But today, they had found something different. A loud, agonized cry echoed across the valley. Elias froze, hand instinctively reaching for his comm device. "Do you hear that?" he asked, scanning the horizon. "Yeah," replied Lieutenant Rin, his second-in-command. "Sounds like an alien, probably one of the warriors from the last skirmish." Elias' gaze focused on the source of the cry. There, lying under a collapsed piece of rock from the cratered mountainside, was a creature unlike anything he had seen before. Its body was tall, strong, and covered in scales that shimmered like liquid metal. Long limbs sprawled at odd angles, and one of its legs seemed trapped under a heavy rock. Its face, sharp, angular, and beautiful in an alien way, twitched with pain as it tried to move. That's a Xerian warrior," Rin whispered, barely audible. "We should leave it." "We can't risk it," Elias frowned. He had heard the stories. Xerians were fierce fighters, respected and feared across multiple systems. But seeing the warrior in this condition, helpless, something stirred in him. He could not walk away. "Leave it," he said, disbelief in his voice. "We can't just leave it to die. We don't know what it's capable of, but it's injured and we can help." Rin shook his head. "Captain, we've got orders. Priority one is to keep our team safe. That thing could be a trap. Besides, other factions will come for it, or worse. It could be poisoned, infected, or carrying explosives. It's too dangerous." Elias felt a twinge of frustration, but he did not argue further. Instead, he looked down at the injured warrior. Its eyes were open now, large, luminescent, and filled with fear and pain. For a moment, Elias felt something almost human in those alien eyes. The decision was made before he even realized it. "I'm going," he said simply. "What?" Rin exclaimed. "Captain, you can't. We leave in 5 minutes. The unit—" "I'm staying," Elias interrupted, his voice steady. "If you want to leave, fine, I'll take responsibility." The team exchanged uneasy glances. In the end, they left him behind. Elias watched their ships disappear into the horizon, leaving him alone with the injured Xerian. He approached carefully, mindful of the creature's strength. One wrong move could cause it pain or provoke it to fight back. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, using the universal translator to bridge the gap between human and Xerian languages. The device had a soft, melodic voice that repeated his words in a tone the alien could understand. The Xerian's eyes narrowed, assessing him. Pain flared across its face, but it did not attack. Elias took that as a small victory. He knelt down and examined the trapped leg. The rock was heavy, and it would take all his strength to lift it. With careful effort he pushed, leveraging his body against the stone. Slowly, ever so slowly, the rock shifted, freeing the Xerian's leg. The warrior groaned, leaning against the rocks. Elias extended a hand, helping it to sit upright. "Can you move?" he asked. Zyra, or the translator gave him the name, shook its head. "Leg broken." "Cannot walk," the translator said. Elias noted the sharp edge of pain in the alien's voice. He looked around. The valley was littered with debris, some sharp and jagged. There was no shelter nearby, and night would fall soon. He needed to act fast. Using his tactical backpack, He pulled out emergency medical supplies, stims, bandages, and a portable field splint. Carefully, he applied the splint to the Xerian's leg, stabilizing the fracture. "Thank you," the translator repeated, this time with a hint of warmth. Elias smiled faintly. He had no idea if the alien had ever trusted a human before. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "We've got to get you somewhere safe." The next challenge was moving Zyra. He could not carry the warrior on his back. The scales were too heavy, and the weight would worsen the injury. Elias improvised. Using metal rods from his kit and strips of durable fabric, he fashioned a simple stretcher. It was crude, but it would hold the Xerian's weight. With great effort, he lifted Zyra onto the stretcher, checking the splints once more to ensure they were secure. Step by step, they moved toward a nearby cave he had spotted earlier. The path was uneven, filled with rocks and sudden dips in the soil. Elias stumbled once, sending a jolt of pain through Zyra's body. The alien hissed, but Elias murmured an apology and continued. The night was falling, and the red sky turned darker, dust swirling like a storm in miniature. When they finally reached the cave, Elias set Zyra down on a bed of folded jackets and blankets from his pack. He worked quickly, setting up a small heat source and covering the alien to keep it warm. "We'll be safe here for now," he said. Zyra's breathing slowed, a sign that the warrior was beginning to relax. "Why help me?" the translator said, voice soft. Elias sat down, wiping sweat from his brow. "Because it's the right thing to do," he replied. "Because no one else would. And because sometimes, doing the right thing is the only thing we can do." The alien studied him, curiosity in its glowing eyes. Elias could feel the tension in the air slowly dissipating. He talked quietly, learning more about Zyra's species, their warrior codes, and their culture of honor. Zyra was proud and fierce, yet vulnerable in this moment, relying on a human soldier who, by all expectations, should have been the enemy. Hours passed, and the first stars appeared in the sky. Elias had improvised a small mobility device using spare rods and servos from his kit. He carefully demonstrated how Zyra could use it to shift slightly, enough to relieve pressure and avoid muscle strain. It was far from perfect, but it worked. For the first time, Zyra moved independently, small gestures of strength showing that even the most powerful warriors needed help sometimes. Elias smiled, heartened by the progress. "You are different," the translator said. "Other humans would have left me to die." Elias shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not, but someone had to try." The alien did not respond further, but Elias could feel a growing respect between them, a silent agreement that they were now partners in survival. The night was quiet, save for the distant rumble of storms and the occasional howl of alien predators. Elias kept watch, never letting Zyra out of sight, feeling a deep sense of purpose he had not felt in years of military service. He thought of his team, and even of the humans back home who might never understand why he had made this choice. But standing here, under the alien sky, helping a creature no one else wanted to save, he felt alive. This was humanity at its finest: courage, compassion, and the willingness to act when others would not. And somewhere deep inside, Elias knew that this was only the beginning. Zyra's survival was more than just a matter of morality. It might change the course of history itself. The cave was quiet, but not completely still. Outside, the red winds of Zurith whistled and rattled loose rocks across the jagged terrain. Inside, Elias Carter sat on a flat stone beside Zyra, carefully monitoring the alien warrior's breathing. The improvised splint and mobility device had worked well enough for now, but he knew that the planet's harsh environment would test both their endurance before they could find true safety. Zyra's eyes followed every movement Elias made. Even in pain, the alien's gaze was sharp, intelligent, and curious. Elias had begun to learn more about Zyra's people. The Xerians were a warrior race with a strict code of honor. They valued strength, loyalty, and courage above all else. To trust a human, someone they had historically fought alongside and against, was unusual, but Elia's actions had made a difference that words alone could not. "Your species human?" Zyra asked, voice low but clear through the universal translator. "Yes," Elias replied. "Captain Elias Carter, and you?" "Zyra," the translator said, "warrior of the Suncrest clan." Elias nodded. "Nice to meet you, Zyra. I'll make sure you get back to your people safely." The Zirian made a sound that was almost like a purr of acknowledgement, though Elias could sense the skepticism behind it. Trust was earned, and actions spoke louder than words. Elias surveyed the cave. It was small but sheltered from Zurith's violent storms. He had set up a small heat generator to keep the cold from seeping into Zyra's broken leg. Using the limited supplies he had, he began to improvise more tools that could aid Zyra's recovery. He dismantled part of his tactical backpack to create a simple harness that could help Zyra stand partially, even with the leg immobilized. Using lightweight rods and elastic cords, he built a frame that allowed Zyra to shift weight safely. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to prevent muscles from atrophying. As he worked, Zyra watched closely. "Human, inventive," the translator said. "Not like others of your kind I have known." Elias smiled. "We humans are good at solving problems when we have to. Sometimes it's all we've got." For the first time since he found Zyra, Elias felt the alien relax. Small gestures of trust began to appear, a slight lean toward the harness, a cautious nod, a quiet acknowledgement when Elias adjusted the splint or moved the injured leg. It was progress, slow but real. Night fell completely, and the winds outside grew stronger. Elias decided it was time to rest. He kept the generator running at a low setting to maintain warmth, and he adjusted the makeshift stretcher so Zyra could recline more comfortably. "Sleep," Elias said softly. "You need it to heal." Zyra's eyes, usually alert and calculating, slowly closed. Elias took a deep breath. This was only the beginning, he knew. Getting the Zirian to safety would require more than splints and clever devices. The planet itself seemed determined to make survival difficult. The next morning, Elias awoke to the sound of distant movement outside the cave. He quickly checked Zyra, who was still resting, and then peeked outside. A small group of strange creatures scuttled across the rocks, predators native to Zurith. They were drawn to movement, smell, and sound. Elias' first instinct was to arm himself and confront them, but he paused. Violence could attract more dangerous attention. He needed a smarter approach. Using rocks and pieces of debris, he created a small diversion, a trail leading away from the cave. The creatures, curious and hungry, followed it, leaving the cave undisturbed. Elias exhaled in relief. Humanity's strength wasn't just in fighting. It was in thinking, planning, and outsmarting challenges. "Human, clever," Zyra murmured when Elias returned. Though the alien's voice was still weak, it carried a hint of admiration. "Sometimes," Elias said, smiling, "the best weapon is your mind." The days passed slowly. Elias fed Zyra with nutrient packs and improvised water filters to make the scarce resources drinkable. The alien's mobility improved slightly, and the harness allowed Zyra to shift weight and even take a few cautious steps. Elias began teaching Zyra basic human techniques for balance and movement that did not stress the injured leg. Through these small, shared moments, Elias learned more about Zyra's past. The warrior had fought in many battles, defending the Suncrest clan's territories from invaders. But it was not just strength that defined Zyra, it was intelligence, strategy, and loyalty to a cause greater than oneself. Elias admired these qualities. In turn, Zyra began to observe human methods. The alien was fascinated by Elias' gadgets, his improvisation, and the patience he showed. It was rare for a warrior used to conflict to see someone who valued life over victory. One morning, Elias noticed that the storm clouds outside were forming unusually fast. He ran simulations in his mind. If the storm hit while they were outside, survival would be extremely difficult. They needed shelter, not just the cave. He looked at Zyra. "We need to move," he said. "There's a safer place nearby, deeper in the mountains." Zyra hesitated. "Leg weak, cannot." "I'll help," Elias said firmly. "We'll do it together." He carefully lifted Zyra into the harness and strapped the mobility frame onto his back. It was a slow, painstaking climb through narrow passages, jagged rocks, and loose stones. The storm began to grow, the winds howling through the canyons, throwing sand and dust into their faces. But Elias persevered, carefully navigating each step, communicating with Zyra through gestures and the translator. Several times, rocks gave way, and Elias had to adjust his footing. Each time, Zyra's grip tightened, trusting the human completely. Elias felt the weight of responsibility but also a strange sense of fulfillment. He was the only one willing to act when no one else would, and that choice mattered more than he had ever realized. By evening, they reached a larger cave, deep within the mountain. It was dry, sheltered, and offered a vantage point overlooking the valley below. Elias set up the generator splints and harness again. Zyra leaned back against the rock wall, exhausted but safe. "You care," Zyra said simply, almost in disbelief. "Others would leave me." Elias shrugged. "I don't know why I do it sometimes. Maybe it's instinct. Maybe it's what makes us human." The alien studied him, their eyes glowing softly in the dim light. There was no hostility now, only respect. For the first time, Elias saw a hint of hope in Zyra's gaze, a recognition that humans were not only capable of violence, but also of compassion, ingenuity, and courage. Over the next several days, Elias taught Zyra how to use the mobility harness effectively. The alien learned quickly, adapting human techniques to fit its own physiology. Together, they scavenged for food, filtered water from underground streams, and prepared for the next storm that Zurith would inevitably send. During one quiet evening, Elias and Zyra sat outside the cave, watching the sky turn from red to deep purple. "Why help me?" Zyra asked, still processing the idea of a human risking so much for an alien. Elias looked up at the stars, then back at Zyra. "Because someone had to. Because life matters no matter the species. And because, sometimes, the right choice isn't easy, but it's the one that defines you." Zyra remained silent, but Elias could feel the alien's thoughts turning inward. Perhaps Zyra was realizing something that humans had long known. Courage is measured not only in strength or skill, but in compassion and the willingness to act when others would not. The days that followed were not easy. Harsh weather, dangerous terrain, and the uncertainty of other alien factions searching for Zyra kept Elias vigilant. Yet, with each challenge, the bond between human and alien grew stronger. Trust had been earned, not given. Mutual respect formed the foundation of their unlikely partnership. By the end of the week, Zyra could stand more steadily and even take short steps on its own with the harness. Elias felt a deep sense of pride. The alien's survival was proof of something bigger, that even in a universe filled with conflict, humanity could shine through ingenuity, compassion, and courage. And deep down, Elias knew that this was only the beginning. Zurith was not done testing them yet. New dangers would come, and they would need to face them together. But for now, as the red sun dipped below the mountains and the first stars of night appeared, there was a moment of peace, a quiet triumph born from humanity's refusal to give up on a life that no one else would save. The winds on Zurith had a way of sneaking into every crevice, rattling rocks and carrying the scent of danger. Elias, Carter, and Zyra had grown accustomed to the planet's harsh temperament, but they knew it could turn deadly in an instant. The temporary safety of the mountain cave was only a small victory. The real challenge lay ahead, moving Zyra back to her people while avoiding the threats lurking in the wilds below. Elias checked the mobility harness once more. The alien warrior had learned quickly, but any misstep could aggravate the injury. "We'll go slow," he said, more to himself than to Zyra. "Every step counts." Zyra nodded, adjusting the device with careful precision. "Human persistent," the translator said. "Few would endure this." Elias smiled faintly. "Persistence is our specialty." They began their descent early in the morning before the sun had fully risen. The path was treacherous. Loose rocks, narrow ledges, and deep ravines made the journey slow. Elias led the way, testing each foothold and clearing debris as they advanced. He had learned over the past week that brute strength was not enough. Intelligence, patience, and careful planning were equally important. Hours passed, and the first real test came. A fissure opened up ahead, a jagged crack in the earth that stretched several meters. The bridge of rock connecting the two sides was unstable, and one wrong move could trigger a collapse. Elias stopped. "We'll need to be smart about this," he said. He examined the fissure, noting where the rock seemed solid. Using spare rods from his kit, he reinforced weak areas, creating a narrow, makeshift path. Zyra watched, impressed by the human's ingenuity. "Your thinking is different," the translator said. "Not like a warrior, but effective." Elias shrugged. "Brains and brawn work best together. Let's move." Step by step, they crossed the fissure. The wind howled, nearly toppling them at times. Zyra's grip tightened on the harness, trusting Elias completely. When they reached solid ground, Elias allowed himself a brief sigh of relief. But danger was never far behind on Zurith. As they continued, distant echoes of movement reached their ears, footsteps that did not belong to the planet's native wildlife. Elias crouched behind a rock, motioning for Zyra to do the same. From the shadows emerged a small squad of alien mercenaries. They had heard of Zyra's presence and were determined to capture her, hoping to leverage the warrior's status for political gain. Elias assessed the situation. He was outnumbered, but he did not panic. Fighting was not always the answer. Using the rocks and terrain to his advantage, he created diversions, throwing small stones to one side, creating noise and guiding the mercenaries away from their path. The aliens, confused and cautious, investigated the disturbances while Elias led Zyra along a safer route. "Human, clever," Zyra whispered, awe in her voice. "Others would face them head-on. You use mind." Elias grinned. "Sometimes the best fight is the one you avoid." The encounter strengthened the bond between them. Zyra realized that human ingenuity was as formidable as any weapon. Together, they had outsmarted opponents who relied solely on strength. Later, as the sun climbed higher, the temperature rose dramatically. Water became scarce, and the rocky terrain offered little shade. Elias used his portable filtration device to provide fresh water and shared nutrient packs with Zyra. The alien's stamina improved with each passing day, a testament to both their survival skills and human care. As they moved through a narrow canyon, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Dust and small stones rained down from above. Elias instinctively shielded Zyra, guiding her to a safer corner. The tremor subsided, but it revealed something unexpected, a hidden path leading to an abandoned research station built decades ago by explorers from other systems. "This could be useful," Elias said. "Shelter, supplies, maybe tools." They approached cautiously. The station was old, its walls scarred by time and neglect. Yet inside they found a small cache of useful equipment, medical supplies, portable generators, and even an old hover platform that could assist in transporting Zyra over rough terrain. Elias' eyes lit up. "Jackpot," he muttered. Over the next few hours, he refurbished the hover platform. It wasn't perfect, but it would reduce strain on Zyra's leg and allow them to move faster through dangerous terrain. Zyra observed every step, learning from Elias' methodical approach to problem-solving. "Human, adaptable," the translator said. Elias smiled. "We adapt or we fail. That's simple." Using the hover platform, they moved steadily through the canyon, navigating jagged rocks and unstable slopes. Elias demonstrated balance techniques, ensuring Zyra could operate the device safely. The alien learned quickly, showing surprising dexterity despite the injury. As evening fell, the sky darkened with storm clouds. Elias knew they needed to find shelter soon. Ahead, a grove of towering crystalline structures offered protection. The formations, natural towers of hardened mineral, created shaded alcoves and natural windbreaks. Elias guided Zyra inside, using the hover platform to position her safely. "You protect me," Zyra said, voice filled with quiet gratitude. "Others would not." Elias looked at her, then at the alien sky above. "I'm not the only one," he said softly. "Sometimes someone has to take a step when no one else will. That's what humans do, we act, even when it's hard." They spent the night in the crystalline grove. Elias kept watch while Zyra rested, thinking about the journey so far. He realized that their partnership had become something greater than survival. It was a meeting of minds, a testament to what different species could achieve together. Humans were not the strongest physically, but their ingenuity, empathy, and courage allowed them to overcome challenges far beyond raw power. The following morning brought new challenges. A series of natural traps, unstable cliffs, sudden geysers of steam and shifting sand tested their endurance. Each obstacle required careful planning, quick thinking, and cooperation. Elias taught Zyra how to use the hover platform to navigate safely, while Zyra offered insights about the terrain from a warrior's perspective. Their teamwork was seamless, each complementing the other's strengths. During a pause in the journey, Elias allowed himself a moment to reflect. He thought about the humans back on Earth, the teachings of courage and compassion they valued. He realized that what they were experiencing here on Zurith was a pure test of those principles. Helping Zyra, surviving together, and facing danger with intelligence and care. This was humanity at its finest. Later, as they approached a cliff overlooking the valley where Zyra's clan resided, Elias noticed movement in the distance. A larger group of alien mercenaries had spotted them and were closing in. Elias had to think quickly. Using the terrain to their advantage, he guided Zyra to a hidden passage that wound down the cliffside. The hover platform allowed them to descend safely while remaining unseen. Elias used small, clever distractions, rolling boulders and reflective surfaces, to confuse the pursuers. By the time the mercenaries realized the alien warrior had escaped, Elias and Zyra were already far below, moving steadily toward their destination. "You survive because of you," Zyra said quietly, voice filled with a mixture of respect and wonder. Elias smiled. "We survive because we work together. That's what humans believe in: trust, courage, and never giving up, even when it seems impossible." As night fell, they set up a small camp near a freshwater spring. Zyra's leg had improved enough to allow limited movement without the harness. Elias monitored her condition, ensuring that the injury remained stable. The aliens' respect for humans had grown, and Elias felt a quiet pride. He looked up at the stars, feeling the weight of responsibility and the promise of hope. The journey was far from over, but they had proven that even in a universe filled with danger and uncertainty, ingenuity, compassion, and determination could overcome the greatest obstacles. And in that quiet moment, Elias knew that the bond between them was more than survival. It was a symbol of what humans could offer to the galaxy, a willingness to act when others would not, and a belief that every life, no matter how alien, was worth saving. Zyra, once a proud warrior dependent on strength alone, had learned to trust the human beside her. And Elias had discovered a purpose that transcended orders, missions, or duty, a purpose born from empathy, courage, and the enduring spirit of humanity. As they prepared to move toward the Xerian clan's territory, Elias felt a deep sense of certainty. No matter what lay ahead, they would face it together. And together, they could overcome anything. The valley stretched below them like a patchwork of red and gold, dotted with crystalline spires and alien structures. Elias Carter and Zyra stood at the edge of the cliff, looking down at the territory of the Suncrest clan. The journey had been long, exhausting, and filled with dangers, but now, after days of storms, mercenaries, and harsh terrain, they were almost home. Zyra's mobility had improved significantly. The harness was no longer necessary for long distances, though Elias kept it on hand in case of emergencies. The alien warrior's eyes glimmered with anticipation, a mixture of hope and anxiety. Her people had not expected her to survive, and now Elias was about to accompany her into territory where humans were often regarded with suspicion. "Are you ready?" Elias asked, his hand resting lightly on the alien's shoulder. Zyra nodded. "Yes, ready because of you." Elias smiled faintly. "I'll be right beside you. Let's get you home." They began their descent carefully, navigating narrow cliffs and rocky outcrops. The Suncrest clan's territory was familiar to Zyra, but Elias relied on both the alien's knowledge and his own tactical instincts. They moved quietly, avoiding detection by anyone who might see a human in the valley as a threat. As they neared the central settlement, a group of Xerian scouts spotted them. Elias froze, unsure how they would react to a human soldier. The scouts exchanged quick signals and approached. Zyra stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "It is safe," she said through the translator. "Human saved me. He is friend." The scouts hesitated, glancing at Elias with suspicion. Their eyes narrowed, scanning him from head to toe. Elias remained calm, keeping his hands visible and his posture non-threatening. He knew that respect would be earned, not demanded. Zyra spoke again, recounting the story of her injury and Elias' role in her survival. The translator conveyed the words clearly: how he had risked his life, how he had shown ingenuity and compassion, and how he had refused to abandon her when no one else would. Slowly, the scout's expression softened. Respect replaced suspicion. After what felt like an eternity, the lead scout nodded. "Bring him forward," the translator relayed. "Let him speak to the council." Elias followed Zyra into the heart of the settlement. The buildings were constructed of crystalline and stone, towering structures that reflected the sun's rays. Alien warriors moved about, practicing combat drills and daily routines, but all attention turned to Zyra and her companion. The council chamber was a wide, open space with intricate carvings and symbols of the Suncrest clan's history. Elders and leaders filled the room, their expressions stern and wary as they watched the human enter. Elias stepped forward, bowing slightly in respect, though uncertain if the gesture would be understood. Zyra began recounting everything, from the ambush that left her injured to the human soldier's decision to stay and help. Elias watched the council's reactions carefully. There was surprise, doubt, and then, gradually, admiration. When it was his turn to speak, Elias addressed the council directly. "I am Elias Carter," he said, voice steady. "I did what any soldier would do if they were able. I saved a life because it was the right thing to do, not for reward, not for glory, but because every life matters. Zyra's courage inspired me to act, and together we survived. That is all I ask, understanding and trust." For a moment the chamber was silent. Then one elder stepped forward, studying Elias closely. "Few humans would act so honorably," the translator conveyed. "You risked yourself for one of us without gain, without expectation. That is rare and admirable." The council murmured among themselves, and finally the elder spoke again. "You have proven the human capacity for courage and compassion. You are welcome in our territory. Zyra is safe because of you, and for that, you have our respect." Elias exhaled quietly, relief washing over him. The recognition was not for military rank or accolades. It was for the simple, human act of doing what was right. Zyra's eyes shone with gratitude, and Elias felt a deep connection, not just with her, but with the Xerian people as well. Over the following days, Elias assisted Zyra with her recovery. The clan provided advanced medical support, but Elias remained by her side, teaching techniques and adapting tools that had helped during their journey. Zyra learned quickly, combining human ingenuity with Xerian resilience. The elders observed their partnership with interest. It became clear that Elias was not just a helper. He was a teacher, a problem solver, and a symbol of the best qualities of humanity. Stories of his ingenuity, how he had built mobility devices, outsmarted mercenaries, and navigated the harsh terrain, spread throughout the clan. Children listened wide-eyed, inspired by the human who had shown courage and care. One afternoon, as Elias and Zyra walked along a crystalline ridge overlooking the valley, Zyra spoke quietly. "Human, you show what is possible. Others would not act. You make us see hope." Elias paused, looking at the alien warrior. "Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to step forward when others won't. That's humanity. We act when we must, even if the world doubts us." Zyra nodded slowly, understanding the weight of his words. "Your courage is legacy. Not just for me, but for others. You change perception." Elias felt a warmth of pride. It was more than survival or completing a mission. It was the idea that one act of compassion and ingenuity could ripple through generations, inspiring others to act with courage and empathy. The days turned into weeks. Zyra regained full mobility and strength, walking and running alongside other warriors. Elias' influence became evident. The clan adopted some of the human tools and techniques, blending them with their own traditional methods. The partnership between species had sparked a small revolution in problem-solving and collaboration. One morning, as Elias prepared to leave, the council gathered to honor him. Zyra stood beside him, her eyes glowing with pride. The elder spoke through the translator. "Human Elias Carter, you have shown that courage is not measured by strength alone, but by compassion, wisdom, and action. Your deeds will be remembered by the Suncrest clan for generations. You have changed the future of our people." Elias bowed, humbled. "I did what any human should do," he said. "I helped a life in need. I am honored that it made a difference." The council nodded and Zyra extended a hand. Elias grasped it firmly. "Thank you," Zyra said simply. "For life, for hope, for showing us humanity." As Elias prepared to leave Zurith, he looked back at the valley, the crystalline towers, and the people he had come to respect. He realized that survival was only part of the story. The true victory was the bond they had formed and the lessons shared between species. Human ingenuity, courage, and compassion had not only saved a life, but had also built trust, understanding, and hope for the future. The hover platform and mobility harness were left behind, gifts for the clan to continue developing and improving. Elias carried only memories of a journey that had tested every skill, every instinct, and every principle he had ever held. Before boarding the transport back to the human outpost, Elias spoke to Zyra one last time. "Keep moving forward," he said. "Teach your people what we've learned together. Use your strength wisely and never forget that life, no matter how different, is always worth protecting." Zyra's eyes glimmered with understanding. "I will because of you. You are human but also hero." Elias smiled. "We're all capable of that. Sometimes it just takes a choice to act." The transport lifted off, carrying Elias away from the planet, but leaving a lasting impact behind. The story of the human soldier who refused to abandon a paralyzed alien warrior would spread throughout the Suncrest clan, a reminder that courage, empathy, and ingenuity are not bound by species. They are the essence of what makes humanity extraordinary. As the red dust of Zurith receded beneath the ship, Elias gazed at the stars. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers, conflicts, and uncertainty, but he knew that wherever humans went, they could shine as beacons of hope. One life saved, one act of courage, one decision to act when others would not. These were the things that changed worlds. And somewhere on Zurith, Zyra walked among her people, stronger, wiser, and inspired by a human who had shown her what was possible. Humanity had left its mark, not through conquest but through compassion, ingenuity, and courage. The galaxy, vast and unpredictable, had seen a small, shining example of what humans could offer. And that example would resonate far beyond one planet, one warrior, or one soldier. It would become a story of hope, a lesson in morality, and a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity. Elias knew this was only the beginning. There would be other planets, other lives in need, other challenges that would demand courage and intelligence. But for now, he carried with him the quiet satisfaction that he had made a difference, not through force, but through the essence of what it meant to be human. And somewhere in the distance, Zyra's voice echoed in his memory, a reminder that courage and compassion were universal, transcending even the vast gulf between species. Humanity had proven itself once again, not through war, but through the simple, powerful choice to act when it mattered most. Everyone refused to save the paralyzed alien warrior, except this human soldier.